Hello everyone. So a lot of you guys asked me to mix skin tones on our group page on Facebook. So I am here to do some skin tones for you. As you can see, I have more dot cards drying over here, and we are progressively getting better. These ones are finally dry, so it looks like by the end of the month I will be able to ship out all of the dot cards to all of our winners so that you guys can try all this amazing paint. I will link up and also create a page on jacquelinejax.com that shares this information and gives you links to where you can get this paint that I'm specifically using to mix these skin tones and get it on sale, which will be really, really fun. The best quality. I'll make sure that each one is light fast, and I will make sure that it's a nice full pan or tube that you can get at a really, really good price. So be sure to check that materials list, and always just go to my blog on my website, jacquelinejax.com, if you want tons of resources and more information. So, I don't know how much you know about watercolor, but there's gold standards in watercolor. And a lot of times you'll get these sets and you're like, it's always the same colors. Well, that's because people use some of the same colors all the time to mix all of the standard things. So when you're having trouble mixing skin tones, you just go back to basics, really, and pull out the basics. These are the colors that are going to give you the best skin tones. So let's go right through the basic colors first. So we're going to use burnt umber. That is in most sets, of course, right? Of course it is. A nice burnt umber. We're going to use Cad Red, another one that is pretty much a standard in most sets. Beautiful color. So handy. I mean, these colors that I'm showing you right now, you literally use these for so many things, from florals to skin tones to landscapes. The next one is Cad Yellow. Then we have a Scarlet. I personally like this Schminke Red. It's the best Scarlet, I find, and it's so smooth. It just makes a wonderful skin tone. So I will get you the number right after I'm done. I'll go ahead and update my blog so you guys can get all the numbers and the links. And I will source them for you, I promise. Burnt Sienna is the next one. It's a beautiful, like an orangey burnt sienna. This is a really smooth burnt sienna too, and it's non-granulating. I don't really recommend, other than in the blue, that you really use any kind of, don't use too many granulating things. I don't think granulating really looks good in the flesh tones. Do you agree? Like, it depends on, I guess, the piece of work, but normally I think that the granulation just doesn't need to be there. So raw sienna is the next one. This is a beautiful, like, kind of like an ochre. It's got this gorgeous, but it's different than an ochre because ochres tend to be very creamy, and you need something that has this beautiful transparency. So make sure that your watercolor is fine grade and professional when you're doing skin tones, or they will work against you, because you do need, see, these nice transparent versions of the colors. And I think that's one of the secrets to getting great skin tones, is having really good fine watercolors. So it depends on what you're using. There are some brands though on my list that are not expensive. Like, I literally can source, I think, these colors for you at anywhere from $3 to, definitely less than $15. So that's not bad, and you get a lot. Dioxidine Violet is the next one, and that is an incredible. I'm kind of like putting them in the wrong spot here, but it's no big deal. Let's go ahead and grab my raw sienna, and let's put my Alizarin Crimson down here. I always get out of order. It makes no difference. They go on the same sheet anyway. And then French Ultramarine. Now this is the one, if you use like French Ultra Finest, then you will not get granulation. You'll just get nice, nice transparency. You're going to be like, what? What? How are you using French Ultra? Okay, we're going to show you right now. Okay, so watch closely because, let's see if I can get you in a little closer here. Watch very closely because it is a little bit of a science. You want to do this several times on scratch paper because there's a mixing thing involved here with a lot of water. So I actually have this brush that I keep reaching for, and you guys know it. It's crazy. The Tintorito. You guys have been like buying this brush like crazy from my links, and I don't blame you because I just keep reaching for it. And you know I have like every Escoda brush known to man, and then I received this brush and I just can't put it down. So it's an Italian make. They are paired up with I think it's A Gallo actually sends these out in their sets, and they are sending me a really nice set. I found out about it through them, and then I actually ordered it myself from Jackson's, and I love it. There's a gold one as well. One of them is like synthetic squirrel and one's a real squirrel. So let's just take burnt umber, and I gave you a nice little splash here, right? So with burnt umber, you're just going to fill your brush with water, and we're just going to dilute it, really dilute it, and work it out on a nice piece of cotton watercolor paper. And as I work out, actually this is not 100% cotton. This is Bockingford. So you can see as I work it out, you can see that we now have a very, very transparent, light version of the burnt umber. Now, what this means is that just in this itself, it's going to start getting you in touch with the colors of the skin. Now, if you've ever, I don't know if you've ever taken a skin tone course or ever really thought about skin tone, but there's basically a yellow and a red, right? So if you have a yellow based skin, then there's like a tan version, right? And then there's all the versions in between, and then there's a pale version, which I am. I'm very yellow base, and my mom is very red base, and there is a tan version of her, and then there's a pale version of her. The pale almost has a blue undertone to it, you know, in some cases, unless she gets a tan, right? So skin tones change, and they change from day to day based on all kinds of things like exercise, because the blood vessels are right underneath the skin. So, you know, different shadows will affect things differently and pull out different colors in these skin tones. But most of all, you can break it down to the light and the dark, right? And I'm not talking about like a black color, right? I'm talking about light and dark, where the light hits the skin, and is it a yellow base or a red base, and where the shadows are. And is the shadow a purple base, a red base, a blue base, you know, or is it more a tan base? Like, is it more like this? So when you start to look at skin shades, you have basically the things that you need to consider yourself with is the shadow, not only the whether it's yellow or red base, but the shadow and the light. We're always looking for the light source, because the light source is going to be the lightest side of these colors, and the shadows are going to be the deepest side of these colors. Make sense? But you can get skin tones from just mixing the common basics that are in every single kit pretty much. And if you don't have them, again, if you don't have transparent colors, if you don't have the right colors, I will link everything below so that you can get it. So let's take that burnt umber again and just put it here. Rinse out my brush and then get the Cad Red and add a little bit of Cad Red. Now we're going to take the water, mix it a little bit, and you can do this in your palette, but I'm just showing you on paper. It's pretty easy. And as I draw down the two colors together and really pale them out, you're now seeing that my Cad Red gives us this beautiful, beautiful shade of kind of like a tanny color, right? But it gives you like a yellowy orange kind of look to it. So if you had yellow undertones in your skin, but say you worked out a lot, or you were, had different background and heritage, right? You might have a little more red, orange, or yellow in the base of the skin. And that's what you're seeing here. So this is a beautiful, kind of like a peachy color that comes from Cad Red. Now we'll mix Cad Yellow in with our burnt umber. So a little bit of burnt umber here. Grab us a little bit of Cad Yellow. We're going to mix it all together. Rinse my brush out again. Remember, it's about drawing down the very, very liquid version of the color. And if it looks too yellow, you just add a little more burnt umber to it. Little tiny bits until you see that color kind of come to like, it cuts the yellow, cuts the fluorescent out of the yellow. So look at how nice that is. So here's where we're at. So now I've got, for my yellow, I have this beautiful yellow base flesh tone. So it just depends on, like I said, the ethnicity of the flesh tone, the lighting in the room, and if they're outside or inside, all that affects the flesh tone. Because I've even had people who have pink flesh tones look very, very different in different lighting. So let's, again, take the burnt umber. Such a great, this is why it's great to have transparent burnt umber. There's certain things that, like when I'm reviewing colors, I'm always looking for certain colors, right? And you're like, oh yeah, that's a great color or whatever. But you hear a lot of people talk about certain colors often. And this is the reason why they're like, oh, I love those earthy tones, right? Because you can get so much, you can use them for so much, and you have to have them. If you don't have them, then you're going to struggle, like you probably are right now. So take the diluted portion and draw it out to see what your color actually is on this one. This one is the burnt sienna mixed with the burnt umber. And this is a beautiful skin color. This is like probably one of my most used skin colors because it's just got this lovely, like almost like a pinky peach, but then you can get this tan version and see like the shadows that you could get as you get the darker side of them. You see the shadows, like you can imagine the shadows. Now you're seeing it, right? Yeah, really pretty. Great skin tones. All right, so let's take burnt umber again. Start there. And this one is going to be with not Alizarin Crimson. This is with Scarlet. Add a little Scarlet. Wash my brush out. This is why we need a lot of water, because I'm mixing on paper. And I'm just going to draw this out. Now this is, of course, a very red looking skin tone. But hey, it really works. It's nice. So the Scarlet gives you that pink base that you kind of get up here, but in a much different way. You can see how different it is, right? I mean, you can get everything, I'm telling you. I can even mix you more than these, but this is just the basics. If you play around with this enough, you can get so many different variations of colors. This is definitely all you need. If you were going to do a skin tone palette, you could do everything with just these colors. This is mixing the raw sienna with the burnt umber. So I got a little burnt umber. I'm almost out of my raw sienna here. Don't need a lot though. Just tap it in. And if you see that it's just pulling too much burnt sienna, then just add a little raw sienna, or burnt umber. Add a little raw sienna. The raw sienna gives you this gorgeous yellowy kind of base in a much different way than the Cad Yellow does. So you can see the difference of what they draw compared to the Cad Yellow version. Much, much different. Now we're going to do this one, this fun one. This is more shadows than anything else. This is burnt umber with our Dioxidine Violet. And I know you've seen this probably done before, the Dioxidine Violet, and you're probably like, oh, that's how that works. That's how they get that. I just want to get enough of it in there so that you have a significant change. There we go. Now, as you can see, I kind of put too much in there, so I'm just going to draw out a little bit because I don't want it to go purple. Although I have seen some really, really cool portraits where they've put, they've been really exaggerating the purple, and I think it looks lovely. I actually think this can make or break a portrait by using the Dioxidine Violet. You just have to kind of work it into your color a little bit. But look at how pretty that is. It's like I have this undertone of the burnt umber. But tell me, like, the Dioxidine Violet isn't almost your favorite skin tone. It's a very cool look, But look at how pretty. It's very cool. Very cool. But yet still you could have all these shadows, these bottom shadow colors. It's just beautiful. Let's do the Alizarin Crimson one. So I always start a little bit dark because, you can just rinse your brush out. Alizarin Crimson is going to pull a lot of pink and totally worth it. And it looks stunning, dramatic in a portrait. Really dramatic. But this is a very very pinky flesh tone. But this looks adorable on beach scenes, where you might have some really bright light to reflect, outdoors or like in a meadow or something. Or if you just want to show the sun on somebody's face, this is a really, really pretty way to do it because it's so pink. It's beautiful. And then you've got, the deeper shades. Okay, so now we do the blue. So burnt umber again. So we pretty much just used burnt umber as a base because it's just a really, really great neutral. And I think that's why I find that every set really circles around the burnt umber. So just add a little blue, and depending on the undertones of your shadow, you're going to have a neutral. This is going to pull like a bluish neutral gray, almost like Payne's gray, something like that. And then it goes to the lighter shade of the undertone of the French Ultra. Add a little more burnt umber, and you're on your way here. This is a very cool. This would be a very cool reflection on the skin. So maybe this was more of a snow scene. It was maybe a winter portrait because you're going to get a lot of cool colors. You know what I mean? So can you imagine how dramatic the purple is, the violet, or the French Ultra? You see what I mean? How beautifully dramatic that is in a portrait. But this is how I get to all of the skin tones. I mean, I've even had people mix in cobalt violet and, try that. I've had them mix in quite a few different, other things. But this is what I think is the best way to go. And as you can see, I can't imagine you not covering every single ethnicity, every single light and dark tones. And just remember, the more umber is the darker shadow, and the lighter is the washed out version of these tones mixed with the umber, so you're going to get the pales here. And then always work from light to dark. So in your layers, you always want to make sure that your skin layer dries before you lay on the next layer. I also find that when I'm working with skin tones, just Let me get a little bit of this one with Alizarin Crimson. So when I'm mixing skin tones in my palette, I'm making them really, really watery. Let me get this closer to you. See what I mean? I'm mixing in tons and tons of water because you can always go darker. You're not really going to overwork 100% cotton. That's why portraits are best on like Arches paper, and whether it be rough or not. But if you mix a really nice, even light wash, then when you go to strike it down on paper, you now can work very, very lightly and let each layer dry, you know? And then depending on how large the skin actually is, you know, the portrait actually is, you can pretty much go over the entire face, or maybe start around the eyes first, you know, some of the areas where it's more dramatic. And also look for areas that the skin color changes. Like, remember, you might start out with this really, really nice pale and then need to transition to the other side of the face where it's pulling more of the shadow, you know? So then you would just add maybe even a little bit of violet to your mix. And then you could do your shadows just by adding a little violet. And then if you had to go more, you know, you just have to pick, though. You can't use every single one. You know what I mean? And if I needed to go more, then I would just keep adding violet to, or whichever color you choose, to the skin tones, so that I can keep developing those shadows. If the paper is still a little bit wet, you can actually let the colors bleed into each other. And if you let the paper dry, of course, it's going to be a little bit more of a dramatic line shift between them. But you can see, because my paper is still wet, I can actually add the dark and just kind of work it a little bit. Now, if you don't have really workable paper, this is where it's going to be a lot harder to achieve a great skin tone. So you might, if you have like cheaper paper, you might want to just do something that's a lot looser, and don't try to, like, you know, do a lot of layers, right? But that's basically how I would do it. And then as these layers dry, you're going to have lighter shades, you know, moving forward. And then if that layer was dry, I literally can even go a little deeper, one little bit at a time, you know. And don't forget, if you add a little more burnt umber to it, then you're not going to go too purple. You know, it just depends on what your skin tone looks like and what you are actually trying to achieve. So this is more of a tan version, but we can cut it back just by taking some clean water on our brush before it dries and just cleaning that up a little bit. This is a good way to prevent the cauliflower too. If you get too much water, it's just drying off on a piece of paper towel, getting a clean brush, drying off on towel, and then cutting it back just like that. But see, I was able to get like a little bit more burnt umber shade and get away from the violet. Now, I've even had some people really go dark. You know, I've had some people get very, very dark with this shade. So you can see how this is a really nice shadow version of the shade. And then again, if I want to go a little further, just get a little more of the purple. And I've got another combination. I mean, it goes on and on. You literally, within each one of these combinations, even if I added, like I started with two colors here, the Cad Red and the burnt umber, and then I started adding the violet, and you can see how I'm just still getting more and more shades. So it's unlimited. Now, I find that a good tip is, because not to jump around in the colors, like I said, try to stick to no more than 3 colors, you know, so like mix your original 2 colors and then no more than either one addition of the violet or choose the blue. So you're either going to go one or the other to develop your shadows. But if you were painting in yellow tones and then you decide, oh, I'm just going to choose some, you know, pink tones and start adding those in, it's going to look really funky. It looks a lot more coordinated if I'm doing it this way. And again, don't forget, add in some more burnt umber every once in a while. So that you don't lose, you don't go completely to the violet stage. I mean, unless that's what you're trying to get. Look at all these beautiful tones. So if I were to get just a little darker on the violet, you can see how it starts to lose the warmth altogether, and now it becomes a shade that's very, very cool. But I have seen that in some really beautiful portraits, you know what I mean? And then of course, if I want to just come down here with a little darker shadow with the umber side mixed with the original red. But because I'm staying in the same family, these all are options. They're all coordinated. They don't clash. They mix very, very well with each other. But you can see how many options I have, right? I have so many options. Now go and look wherever you go to look up portraits. Go look in Pinterest and see watercolor portraits. And now you're going to see them in a much different way because you're going to be like, oh, wow, yeah, I see what she's saying. You know what I mean? This is a really dramatic dark one, but this is another shadow you might have, you know, like say it's the beach and it's a really harsh sun day, right? Like a very harsh sun. You're going to have a side in the picture that is very dark in shadows. I've seen some people, you know, half of their face is so dark and some of it is so light. So like maybe it would be very, very light, but then you need that contrast, you know? So look at that. All right. So just from those 3 colors, I mixed a full range that you could use depending on the scenario and what you needed to paint, you know? But can you imagine how beautiful that would look, right? This is so beautiful for a day at the beach, you know, a Sunday afternoon at the park, a winter even, like, you know, somewhere in between, a really beautiful, like I could see where this could go in winter cooler shades and a beautiful cool shade of, you know, just do the whole entire painting in shades of the violet. I mean, it's really, really pretty. All right, guys. Well, tell me what you think. Tell me which mixtures you like the best. And if you try it, I'd love to see you come over to my group page on Facebook and connect with us there and show us what you painted. I'm Jacqueline Jax, and I have tutorials and classes all over my website, especially the latest one that is coming out for September 1st. The pre-sale is already up and available to you, and it's at jacquelinejax.com. It is on journaling with watercolor for beginners. Guys, have a great one, and I'll be back again soon because I just got in some new goodies that I have to open. So we're going to do an open box coming up next.